Hi, I'm Nature Nate, and this is Waste Not, Why Not, a sustainability science show. We're back with a new season in partnership with the American Institute in Taiwan. We're going to talk all things sustainability, climate change, from electric vehicles, to the ocean, to trash, to green buildings. And that's why we're here today at the American Institute in Taiwan. Behind me is a green building. But what makes a building green, and why do we care? We spend 90% of our time indoors, and the building sector is a significant contributor to climate change. So if we ever want to reach net zero and stop the climate crisis, we have to figure out how to make buildings green. So come with me, we're gonna go inside and talk to the man behind the green building. Let's go. And today I'm here inside AIT. We're on a campus that covers 6.5 hectares, and it's actually a green building. But what does that mean? What is a green building and why do we care? Well, we spend 90% of our time indoors, and buildings are a significant cause of climate change. So if we're going to reach net zero, if we're going to stop the climate crisis, we're going to need to have a lot more green buildings. And the people who make buildings green are facility managers like Lee Carnell, who's sitting here with me now. The secret heroes of sustainability. When I was back in college, working on environmental committee, if we wanted to do anything to make our campus more green, LEDs, water efficiency, native plants, we had to work with facilities. And so I've gained a lot of respect for facilities managers, and I think it's important to hear about the work that they do. And as we start the show, I want to begin with, Lee, you're a bicycle man. You like to bicycle to work. And I gotta ask, when I bike in Taiwan, it's kind of a sweaty experience. When you bike to AIT, when you take a shower here, is that with recycled water?
It is not with recycled water. We use potable water for such things as drinking and showers and
because you don't want to shower with toilet water.
No, not really. I mean, you could filter it, and there are technologies out there that are becoming available now where you can recycle the water for showers, but we're not there quite yet to make that a feasible solution for us, but someday.
Okay. So where did you first start out working in U.S. embassies doing facilities?
My first job, I was in South Africa, Pretoria, South Africa. And then from there, I was in Asuncion, Paraguay, Bucharest, Romania, Tegucigalpa, Honduras most recently. And then I've been assigned here to AIT.
Okay. So what really does make a building green? I mean, I talked to people and I said, we're going to do an episode on green buildings. And they're like, what's that? Just a little worrying, but let's unpack that. What is a green building? How do you explain green buildings to maybe your kids, let's say?
So a green building is, when you think about green, you think about plants and you think about the environment. Now this building is made out of concrete and stone and electrical wires and plumbing and all the things that normal buildings are constructed from, but we try to use technology and best practices to make them to lower their impact on the environment and on the world. So the reduced footprint is what we're really pushing for. And also to make it more sustainable. Sustainability, I think the definition of that word is oftentimes just overlooked. We just hear sustainability. It's a it's a catch-all that everyone's like, oh, sustainability.
I'm sustainable. You're sustainable. This is sustainable.
Right. But if you unpack that word, it means having something that you can replicate over and over again, and self-sustaining is a really great objective or a goal. And that's what I really think green buildings are striving to do, is to reduce the need to constantly be bringing in additional resources, be that electricity, be that water, all kinds of different energies, be that fuel for, a combustion, anything like that.
So it's more about resilience. It's almost about independence. If the word green turns someone off, it's about making us more adaptable to live within our earthly bounds. So
definitely.
You mentioned a couple different things, energy, water. How do you approach a green building in terms of these broad categories? I know that LEED has some classifications and criteria. We don't want to get too far into the weeds there, but what are like the big buckets that you look at in terms of a building's environmental impact?
So I think the big ones are your energy, which can be electricity, it can be natural gas, it can be all different forms of combustion, any of the things that you use to to produce energy. The lights, the electricity, those things can be hydroelectric. You can have all these different things, and implementing those into a building will help make it green. Now, you mentioned LEED. The U.S. Green Building Council has this certification process where you can become recognized for meeting standards to say you are officially green. And there are different categories. You can be certified, you can be silver, you can be gold, you can be platinum. And there are several places in Taiwan that are LEED certified or above. We are also, we are LEED silver in AIT. Now, to get there is a very interesting process, because I think when I used to think about greening, I think about things that you can buy, like lights. Oh, LED lights. Those are
AI air conditioning systems.
Right. Which they're all great. But you get a lot of benefit from those. But the biggest impact is thinking before you even build a building. There's a lot that goes into planning a building and thinking about, hey, how can we make this the least impactful construction project? During construction, what are we going to do with all the waste we produce during construction? Right. The land that we have, what are we going to do with the land? How can we best use it? How can we best use it so it won't be adversely impactful to the environment or to the ecosystem around?
Right. You don't want to build a new energy efficient, eco building on top of a rare habitat, right?
Right.
It's hard to have a green building when you're replacing it there.
Exactly. So having this holistic approach.
So Lee, where we put the building matters a lot for LEED certification. How is that calculated? How do you decide what's a good location to build a building?
Well, when we're talking about where to build it, there are a lot of different subjects we can talk about. If we're talking about the impact on the environment alone, for example, AIT, we are on a pretty big piece of land here, but we made a point to only develop less than 50% of the site.
It's like a jungle over there.
Yes. And we actually have it fenced off. So we are maintaining that undeveloped. And in a lot of ways, you can't even go in the space unless you're four-legged or winged or something like that, because we want to leave that as natural as possible.
Wow. Right in the urban core.
Right. And I mean, we're just a few steps away from the MRTs. We're very close to everything here. But there's a refuge right here that is untouched, and we have committed to maintaining that. Now, that's one part of site selection. Where can we have enough space to build and still do our part as a global community member? But also, where are we in relation to everything else? There are places in the world where we have buildings that are in the suburbs. Well, that requires transportation to get to. And so we have all these people commuting to these spaces way out of the city center.
I think I grew up in one of these places.
Most Americans do. We're not very good at mass transit. Yeah. And so one of the things that you can really focus on in LEED to get the credits, that's how it's based, is a credit-based system, is to make sure that you're close to public transportation, and we have buses, we have MRT, we're getting bike racks.
And I also saw U-Bikes outside, which are a bike sharing program here in Taipei.
Yeah, so those are brand new U-Bike stations we're getting right out front. We're looking to improve as much as we can. Now, with that being said, that impacts our design of our building. We have reduced the number of parking spots that we have on campus to not only because we don't think we need them, but also to encourage people to not fight over parking spots and just take in other modes of transportation.
And that's why you bike?
I bike for a lot of reasons, but one is because I just love the ride. And from going along the river, it's beautiful. It's the best community I've ever had. Also, I don't like having to wake up early or stay up late to work out. There's other things I want to do. But it's a beautiful city to ride or bike in, and I've really taken advantage of that to my.
Okay, so where the building matters a lot, and then I think another one might be what the building's made out of. We talked a little bit about concrete, Is there anything special about what this building was made out of? Is that anything for this kind of LEED certification, or in general, how do green buildings approach the materials?
Materials are very interesting. When you think back to really fancy buildings that were built in the mid 20th century, no one thought about, hey, I want to use the wood from down the street. They're like, no, I want to use marble from Italy. I want to import from the same quarry that, Leonardo da Vinci used. And so then they had to ship it. They had to mine the stuff, ship it across the ocean, ship it across the land.
These are big blocks.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that was the way people thought, and what we have done, and as part of LEED, what we have done is we tried to increase where we could locally sourced materials. And so we have a good percentage of our materials came from within 500 miles of this site.
So it's about where the materials come from. Does the type of material factor into LEED certification? Is it better to use wood instead of concrete? We talked about how marble might not be the best. Is there like a preference for recycled materials?
Yes. You do the best you can, right? I think also today what a green building looks like, I would love to see what a green building looks like 20 years from now. Because I think the materials will change. I think that we will see advancements, but we're doing the best with pushing the envelope as we can at this time.
Right. We're human.
Right. We don't know everything yet, but I think it was more of a question of how we use things. We recycled a good amount of the material, or either use recycled materials in the building, or we made sure that our waste was recycled. So, and I think I have a percentage here, if you give me a second to find it. 22% of the total building materials were manufactured out of recycled products.
Wow.
So almost a quarter of this building we tried to use recycled materials for. So that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, and this building was designed, it took a while, right? I mean, the original design was...
The design of this building happened over a decade ago. But construction, it took 9 years from beginning to end.
Do you talk to other embassies who have LEED certification? Do you guys have like a chat group? I know there's, we've done a little bit of background. We know there's some LEED Platinum, there's some LEED Gold. Is there a sense of competition amongst the facilities staff?
Oh, I think we're in it together. It's a team thing.
A friendly.
It's a friendly thing. And I think whenever we see a facility get a LEED certification, silver, gold, platinum, we wear it as kind of a badge of honor. So it's not really like, oh my gosh, so-and-so over there, they're doing better than us. It's, oh wow, we've got another win. And we've got another thing that we can project that we really want people to also be doing this as well. So every time we do something, we hope that we are serving as some sort of good example in some ways. And we think of it that way. So yeah, there's competition, trying to get the best we can be, but in the end, it's a win for all of us if we can get to prove that we are green in our built environment.
And this is a U.S. government goal to have all embassies be at least LEED Silver.
Right, correct. We've had a few that have gone way above that. This one's a LEED Silver. I think a lot of it depends on the environment, the climate, the things that are available in that area. Here, there are some LEED credits that are harder to get than others.
Right.
While, for example, solar power, you mentioned earlier, has been kind of gray around here lately. So the cloud cover affects how much solar power you can generate. Well, if we were in the desert in
Dubai with their gold LEED, okay.
They're a good example. They have a great solar panel system, and they have some really cool, innovative things that they've done with that. But they can really harness that power because they have full blast every day. And so they get the benefit of that. While we are going to get solar panels here, we don't expect them to be as efficient as the ones you see in Dubai. And so that's why they get those credits. And we're very proud of what we were able to accomplish here. But some things are easier to accomplish with technology in certain climates versus others.
Right. Work with what you got, not a competition. We're all, blossoming in our own way.
It's that balance you have to strike, right? We could probably push to get other degrees, but sometimes things are so cost prohibitive that you can't get there yet. 10 years from now, it may be easier. And LEED has a system in place to certify already built existing buildings. And so they have that program in place for that specific purpose. So if people go and say, hey, we want to renovate our building and make it better, they can invite LEED in and say, okay, we'll help you make your building LEED certified as an existing building.
Right, because once the building's built, there's only so much we can do. But there's a lot of buildings have a long lifespan. And,
yeah.
And you need to make sure that, if we're going to hit our climate goals, if we're going to hit net zero, why not just bring everyone into the fold? Okay, so we can't always control how we're born, who our parents are, but in the life of a green building, it matters how you live, right? That's kind of where you're involved. So what are the ways that during a building's operations we can make it more green?
So in this building, because it's LEED, a lot of the things have been done already, right? But we're always finding things that we can do to reduce energy consumption. We use only LED lighting in the building. But one day I came in and I saw in our parking garage that all the LED lighting was on and there was no one in the parking garage. I'm like, why are these lights on if we're not using these lights?
Is it like a ghost thing, or
No, they were just somebody had turned the switch on and they just stayed on 24 hours a day.
Okay.
And so it was just probably an oversight. And so we came in and we said, well, let's put in motion sensors. So now when people go in, they turn on, they stay on for a little while, and then they turn off again. It doesn't make a huge difference, but we save some energy every time that we turn those lights off.
How would the electricity consumption in AIT compare to a traditional building?
So that's a good question. We consume 75% less energy when it just comes to lighting alone.
Wow. So what comes to my mind when I look at my electricity bill in Taiwan, air conditioning. This is a big building, got to keep it cool, especially in the summer. There's a lot of sunlight, you're kind of on this hill. How do you manage the AC? How do you keep it cool?
We have some really big chillers, and we have a couple of them, but they are really fancy. They are controlled electronically by these devices that reduce the amount of energy it takes to run them. And then we also have a position with my staff, an engineer who all he does is monitor the electricity usage, our air conditioning usage, our lighting, all these things to make sure that we're doing it as efficiently as possible. It's called a building automation system. So we can monitor these stuff. And so these, like in your house.
So there is a building AI. This is sort of like a HAL 9000 situation, or?
Yeah, it really is. It's pretty impressive what we are able to see and what we can say, oh, this is running at, we can track trends. And we can say, oh, something's out of whack. Something's changed. What's changed? And we can go in and see, oh, this device is running harder than it should be. Something must be wrong. Let's fix it so we can get back to our normal operating level. But also we can see where how the weather affects our building. And we also design the building so that we can take advantage of the environment to help us reduce the need for cooling. So for example, if you look at our windows, we have these little awnings that come off of parts of the building. These little awnings, a lot of people don't even think about them. They look at them like, oh, that's cute.
I don't think I noticed them.
They think they're cute or whatever. They're designed to look nice. No, they're really designed to help prevent the sunlight from noonday sun, the hottest part of the day, from coming into the building and warming up the space. And so doing this, all these little steps have helped us be able to reduce the amount we need to air condition the space.
That's smart. That's subtle. I understand that, a lot of green buildings, they might do something special with the roof, like solar panels or white roofs or some kind of rooftop garden. Does AIT have anything like that?
We do a little bit of all of that.
Oh, all of the above.
Either we are doing that or we're planning to do that. Okay. We have white roofs, and we actually just had a big project the last month where we pressure washed all of our roofs to make them whiter. Because over time they got dirty, and when it gets dirty, it absorbs more sunlight or more intensity from the sun, so it warms up the space. So by cleaning them, we made them better. And then we also have a few areas where we have green roofs. We have a little garden on top of the building. And that's just solely, no one can actually go into those spaces. It's really just to improve our green space and reduce our greenhouse effect that our building could cause.
Okay. And then solar panels. I think you also said those are coming.
Those are coming. Yes, we are working really hard right now to put a very substantial set of panels on our compound. We're hoping to have our parking garage second level covered with solar panels, maybe later this year if we're lucky.
Okay. That's exciting. I'm looking forward to that. So we talked about energy. We've talked about heating. The other thing that comes to mind is water, right? When we were walking up the hill, I saw what looked like a really interesting landscaping or irrigation system. There are these brown snake pipe-like devices kind of spreading out across under the plants like a big spider's web covering the hill and all the trees and bushes. Snake things, it looked like.
Yes.
What are those? How do you manage water?
So water is one of our most important resources. And in a city like Taipei, we're lucky to get a lot of rain. So we don't need to irrigate that much. But when we do, we want to make sure we're doing it efficiently. And the way we do that is with what you noticed are these brown hoses all over the grounds, and they're drip lines. And so instead of spraying water through a sprinkler out into the air where some of that water would evaporate before it even hits the ground, a big portion of that water, when it's sprinkled, does evaporate after it hits the ground. So it doesn't even get to the plant. These systems that we have, these hoses that we have all over the building, all over the compound, are little drip lines to send water directly to the plants and the minimal amount necessary to help them survive and thrive.
Surgical precision with the water, not just spray and blast and hope the water gets there.
Yeah. I mean, but when you have a property as large as this and you then look at how much water it takes to irrigate an area like this, it makes you lose your mind about, oh my gosh, that's how much water. And just on the cost alone, if you weren't even thinking on greening, if you're thinking about the cost of water, then you really hit your pocket. You go, oh my gosh, this is so much water.
So green buildings are also a little bit of a money thing too.
Oh, definitely. It's always a component because you can always buy the cutting edge technology that's the most expensive and it might not be the most efficient. And then you were like, oh my gosh, I spent all this money and it ended up, costing me so much to maintain and things like that. So there's a balance where you have to say, okay, we want to have the least impact on the environment, but we also need to do that within our budgetary confines.
Financial sustainability.
Exactly. Yes.
You mentioned Taiwan rains a lot, and that's, it's been pretty dark this week. For those that don't know, Taipei is a very rainy city. It doesn't have the best water storage. It just kind of flows out in the ocean. Is there anything that AIT does to collect the rainwater, use the rainwater?
We have two things that we do. And I think you've made a really good point when it comes to the importance of rain for Taipei. We do rainwater harvesting for our irrigation system. So it's all purified and brought to a standard that we can use it. So we capture it and it goes into a tank, and then we pump from that tank to water all the grounds, which is a lot of water. It's great. Right. So we're not using city water to do that. We would only do that under the most severe circumstances, and I don't imagine that ever happening. The other thing we do is we capture, during a big storm, we capture the rain that does go into the gutters on compound, and they go into retention tanks.
Oh, interesting.
And so the tanks hold the water, and it either will be percolated, I guess is the word I'll use, into the ground and the soil and over time, or we can then use that back into our system. So we can do almost like a closed loop on that.
Interesting. So it's kind of like your own aquifer, sort of, and
like an artificial aquifer.
Yeah. And for people that don't know, that's how the ground works. When it rains, the water seeps into the soil, and that's like when you pull it out from a well. So you're kind of creating your own well, in a sense.
Pretty much for specific purposes, but the goal is to reduce the amount of water that we're discharging into the city sewage or the storm water drain.
Right. So that makes everything better, right? Because you're reducing your need to pull out from the dams, which is going to make sure that Taipei stays water secure.
Right. And I heard last year there was a big drought here, and there were some concerns on.
Yeah, quite the
water.
paradox in a place that rains so much. What about the indoor water usage? Do we have water efficient toilets? Do we have water efficient showers? How do you manage water in usage in the building?
Yeah, we have, again, when we were talking about earlier about balance, you also have to have a balance with these things because people's tolerances are different, right? When you go to when you take a shower, you want some good pressure coming out.
You don't want drip irrigation showers.
Right. So for the showers that we have, for the people in our locker room that want to use after they bike in from work, they have shower heads that are low flow shower heads. So the pressure is increased, but the amount of water that actually comes out of them is less. So that you feel like you're getting clean, you're washing the stuff off, but in the end, you actually use less water at the end of your shower than you would have normally.
It's like focusing the water, like a super soaker or squirt gun.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Just make it a little higher pressure, and you feel like, oh yeah, that's really blasting the dirt off of me, versus just having a ton of water coming out at once. We also make sure that our toilets and urinals are all hyper efficient devices. So they are low flow. We went for a long time where we were using. We had urinals that were waterless urinals.
Oh, the waterless urinals. Yeah.
Yeah, there were a lot of problems with those. That was like,
really?
It was the cutting edge idea, and everyone was like, "Oh, these are great."
Yeah, I used to see them. It seemed brilliant.
Yeah,
but I never took care of them.
That's the thing. They were great, but they did require some maintenance. And so if you didn't know and you didn't do what you were supposed to maintain them, they would end up breaking and clogging, and things would happen to them. So now they said, okay, the balance is we're going to use these low flow devices to make sure some water goes through to protect the infrastructure, but it's just the minimal amount to preserve our system while also conserving water.
So we've talked about energy, water. What about the stuff in the building? Like these chairs we're sitting on, for people who are listening, probably won't know what these look like, but these are green chairs for a green building discussion. Are these chairs sustainable?
They are. One of the important things that we sought out when furnishing this building, and even the paints we used, was to make sure that they were low VOC, which are volatile organic compounds.
Are they like really crazy? Is that why they're volatile? They're just like going to snap at any moment?
Well, it's those are the things that you go into a building and you go, oh my gosh, it smells like fresh paint in here. And sometimes it's like, oh, it's very low, but sometimes it's like overpowering and can give you a headache.
Yeah.
That's
not good.
That's not good.
Okay.
And that's your VOCs. That's those volatile organic compounds off-gassing. And they're not good for the environment. They're not good for our health. And so we have reduced those as much as possible. We only use low VOC products, and our furniture is all Green Guard certified. So meaning that it is certified not to provide that off-gassing that we're worried about, and it is more sustainable.
What about the air people breathe? What about, it's obviously COVID has been a big thing. How do you manage indoor air quality? How do you manage a green building in sort of a pandemic context? Has anything changed?
Well, we definitely think about it a lot more.
Right.
And we have made adjustments to optimize, to be in line with the suggestions from the CDC. That was one of the big things they suggested, was that we need to increase outdoor air, fresh air, that would have a big impact on, in reducing potential viral loads. So that was one thing that we all started immediately. I mean, I remember back in, April of 2020 of communications coming out going, check your building, maximize outside air. And doing that, we had to do some balancing and figure out the air pressure in the building and things like that. But
also about AC, right? I mean, if you're opening the window, you're letting in hot or cold air.
Right. But you also have to make sure, when you, as an engineer, you design buildings that way, that you have to introduce fresh air into the building. Because if you're just recycling the same air over and over and over again for a very long time, you get what's called sick building syndrome.
Sick building syndrome.
Yes.
Is this what happens on planes?
Well, you have a very high filtration system on airplanes. So they have a lot of air turnovers. It's not as, it's scarier than it really is. It's scarier in your mind than reality.
Okay.
But it's a real thing where people just weren't getting enough fresh air. It's very stagnant, and then you just don't have the benefits of fresh air. We all say fresh air is good for us, but then we go inside a building and we're like, hide from it for some reason.
And you feel bad and you don't know why.
So when we design air conditioning systems, we have a component that we introduce to make sure we're getting some fresh air in the building. We're maximizing that now, and this building is probably one of the safest buildings because we have 4 air changes every hour. That means that for every hour, we change the air in the building 4 times. So we're bringing in that much air from outside, but that also means that we have to do a very good job of filtrating that air. So we have layers upon layers of air filters, HEPA filtration, and HEPA filtration does a lot to reduce exposure to pathogens, and so we have special filters for that as well. So when you're in this building, you can feel a little more comfortable, not completely, but you know that the air conditioner is not shooting out bad things because we're hyper.
So I don't need to be worried right now.
No,
we're good.
We're really.
How many layers?
It's hospital layer. It's hospital grade air in AIT. So
wow.
Yeah, it's very good.
That's
take
healing.
advantage. Yeah. Well, sometimes when I was in other parts of the world, there was a burning season, and you would say, I just want to go to work so I can breathe some fresh air. You'd go inside to breathe fresh air because the air outside was so bad. I mean, we know of several places around the world where the air quality is so bad, but you come to AIT or to another similar type building, you go, oh wow, the air is really good.
So the filtration changed with COVID. Were there any other kind of COVID impacts with like lockdown, the way you had to manage like people in the building, smart sensors, power usage?
Oh my gosh, yes, we were doing everything. I mean, things have gotten better as we've learned more about COVID. But we had to manage, we had to reduce, in some places, we've been very lucky in Taiwan where, we're going through a little bit of a higher load of cases, but we've been very blessed. The rest of the world, it's been crazy. And we've had places where pretty much the whole building is shut down. Where I just came from, that was the case where they maximized telework. Everyone worked from home, don't come to work. And so only a few people with special permission were able to come into work. And so when they came into work, we made sure that they were sitting not in the same area, that they were separated by a cubicle, or that we had plexiglass up. We had all these things that we were trying to come up with. But in my area, we were doing all those things, and we, I'm sure they have some effectiveness, but the biggest things was on our mechanical systems, making sure that we were bringing in fresh air and we were doing these air changes to make sure that if there was exposure, that it was minimized and it wasn't just floating around, and we got it out of the building as fast as possible.
Any other kind of sustainability commitments? How do you manage waste in a green building? Not just the building's waste, but just cafeteria, trash, stuff like that.
Well, we have a green committee within AIT where we have a bunch of community members that come together and we talk about these subjects and we start looking for areas where we can improve. And we have all these ideas. There's things that we've come up with. We've had some great success in some areas. The solar panel project, it was something that resulted from a bunch of different conversations with a bunch of different parties that came together and said, hey, we can hit a couple of birds with one stone and take care of this.
Got this parking lot, solar panels.
Right, yeah. And people were like, oh, we need cover because the sun and the rain and all this stuff. And we're like, why don't we put solar panels up there? And we looked at it and we said, oh, it's feasible. We can do that. We've worked with other vendors outside, the bike share, U-Bike here in Taipei. We've worked with them, and they put out these new racks out front of the building. We've worked with a couple other companies trying to provide better transportation here. But even with our cafeteria, there's one thing we noticed recently that we all get these paper bento boxes that we get from the cafeteria when we go.
Paper lunchbox.
Paper lunch boxes, yes. And we're going, well, how wasteful is that? We're just using this for 30 minutes and then it goes straight in the trash. And so we're in talks now of figuring out a way where we can use metal containers that we can reuse, and we can then give like some type of token system to maybe even gamify it so people can get rewards from using it and bringing the stuff back. And so we're always thinking of ideas, and like we've said already, small things are small things, but when you add 100 small things together, it equals a big thing. So we're looking for these small wins to help us push even further the envelope that we've tried to obtain with our green building.
Okay, so that was kind of a big time for facilities, green building management, and we've experienced a lot of changes lately. Net zero, new green building standards. How are you seeing the future of green buildings evolve? How are you seeing with these, the U.S. commitment to have LEED silver certification? Where do you see kind of the direction of travel for green buildings going in the next few years?
I think everything's going to get better. I think technology is slowly, I think we've come to a little bit of a plateau where we're kind of accepted these green technologies in the world, solar panels and, these energy efficient devices. And I think those things are going to continue getting better. We see those with battery technology. Do we get to a point where we are storing energy on compound and we're using that later? Do we get to a point where we're even maximizing more the use of water that we have and recycling water? You brought up using recycled water for showers. I know that there are companies that have that technology where they just recycle the water that you're using in the shower, and it's a closed loop, so you don't have to do that. Is that ready to be deployed in AIT? Probably not, but I see that coming, and I see that we'll see the measurements for efficiency go even higher, where we're saying the expectation is this today, and we'll just be shocked at what the expectation is in the future. So I think the future is bright when it comes to that. And I think it's just a matter of us being conscious and really fighting to make sure that those are priorities going forward, because without that, we could just be stuck in where we are. We always need to be pushing to see what the next discovery or the next green technology or green practice is, better said, because the way we do things is not necessarily with what we do things, it's how we use those tools. So
it's an imagination, it's will that goes into it. And if someone's listening to this and they want to get into green buildings, they're interested in, changing their career path sort of as you did early on, what are the skills that someone would need, or maybe the ideas that someone should be thinking about if they want to get interested in green buildings, facilities management, that sort of thing?
Oh my gosh. Where do you start? There's so many.
Everything.
The landscape is so wide. You could focus on very small niche fields of study, or you could be very broad and just look at policy and thinking about things like that. So you could, there's room for everyone. There can be, technology, engineer. You don't have to be, you don't have to invent the new solar panel or energy cell. You don't have to do that. You can be the person that goes, hey, we could recycle these products that we never thought of recycling before. And this is how I can do it. And, I see stuff all the time. I'm always looking up new stuff, and I see people coming up with great ideas for things that people before were just disregarding or not even paying attention to. So I think it's just being aware, and you can always find a space to thrive in this field for sure.
Come as you are. There's room.
There's definitely
there's room in the green building.
There's definitely, and there's so much room that we haven't even discovered yet. So it's like, oh, you can create your space because there's so many things you still can find out there.
All right, Lee, thanks so much for sharing your insights about green buildings and your knowledge with us today. Facilities, how to, add up all these little different things to really lead to big change. Energy, solar panels, energy efficiency, lights, air conditioner, a guy who just manages air conditioners, layers of filters. Really valuable to share with our audience. So thanks again for spending the time and sharing this with us.
Thank you. It's been a great experience to be able to reflect on a lot of the stuff that we do every day that we just take for granted. But it's always good to know and remember that we are making a little bit of a difference when we are working hard every day.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add? Is just sort of speaking for all the facilities managers making these buildings green?
No, just always pat the mechanic that you see walking down the hall in your building because they're working really hard to do the best job they can. And there's a lot of work that goes on to making us be able to spend 90% of our time inside of a building, like you mentioned at the top of the show. So we really need to, I would appreciate everyone showing a little gratitude to those hard workers who are trying to make the built environment as safe and comfortable as possible.
Well, thank you, Lee. Maybe I'll give you a pat on the back later. And for everyone listening, thank your mechanic, thank your facilities lead. They're doing hard work. That's going to wrap up our episode. We have 4 more coming soon. We're going to talk about energy. We're going to talk about electric vehicles. We're going to talk about trash and the ocean. So stay tuned. A lot more content coming from this AIT partnership. Again, I'm Nature Nate. This is Waste Not, Why Not. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.